People are the environment. I think humans for a long time have somehow seen ourselves separate, and almost like we were given a God-given right to, the environment was over there and we controlled our environments. We don't control our environments. We are our environment.
That was Brian Wehlburg, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey.
From wherever we are, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, recognising their continuing connection to this land, its waterways, the stars in the skies since time immemorial. We pay our respects to the elders, knowledge holders, and to all the generations of First Nations peoples who have nurtured their unceded sovereign lands for over 80,000 years and continue to do so today.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, an 8th generational Australian regenerative farmer. And in this podcast series, I'll be diving deep and exploring my guests' unique perspectives on the world so you can apply their experience and knowledge to cultivate your own transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with your host, Charlie Arnott.
G'day, welcome back to The Regenerative Journey and welcome to our interview with Brian Wehlburg. Brian is one of the most prolific holistic management facilitators and educators in Australia. I tend to always run into Brian at airports. It seems to be a bit of a thing, but he is always on the go, running courses across Australia pretty much. It feels like 24/7. Brian and I did a virtual interview this time, as Brian is very hard to track down. I've been trying to do it for some years, and we thought the best thing to do was to just jump on a virtual. And in doing so, we also wanted to highlight the fact that Brian is running a holistic management course here, when I say here, at Burrawa. The first, it's over 4 different sessions, so it's 2 days per session, a total of 8 days. Brian does get into this, into the nitty-gritty of what you'll actually do and how that all works within the interview, so hang on to your ears and listen up. He'll tell you all about it. But just so you know, before it escapes me, we are on the 22nd of October helping organise for Brian in Burrawa. There'll be trips out to various, I think David Marsh and myself here at Burrawa. 22nd of October is the first, 22nd, 23rd of October, I should say, are the first 2 days. Then the 26th, 27th of November, 14, 15 in January, 18, 19 February. So it's 4 sessions, 2 days each, over those 5 months. There's nothing happening in December. It's a pretty busy time of the year, obviously. So just to let you know about that, we had a wonderful chat. Talked about, it was shortish compared to other interviews because we only had limited time. But I got down to the nitty-gritty on Brian and how he came into to be such a prominent character, an educator in the holistic management world. Bit of a deep dive into what the holistic management course entails, some of the principles. He is so articulate, such a good communicator. I think that's one of my big takeaways from this was how important language is and how and essentially what a great communicator he is, and his ability to turn some potentially complex, dare I say complicated topics into pretty simple terms and simple ways to understand it. While I've still got you, I've got a couple other announcements to make. Very shortly on the 9th and 10th of September, we are holding a stress-free stockmanship workshop here with Bruce Maynard. It's over 2 days. It's a Monday, Tuesday. We've got a half day in town at one of the clubs for the theory, and then the next day and a half we'll be out here at Hannah in our yards, in our cattle yards, in our sheep yards, working sheep and cattle to help us tune into the natural behaviours of animals. And essentially, when we do that, we actually we make ourselves better handlers and better people of animals. And funnily enough, these principles, from what I understand, are certainly animal movement and husbandry principles I've tried to practice at least and know about. They also apply to people, which is really interesting. So we've got that on the 9th and 10th of September. Just email Bruce Maynard, BruceMaynard, at outlook.com, Bruce Maynard at outlook.com to book yourself in. If you go to charliearnott.com.au, you'll see all the details there in the events page anyway. Also, on the 16th and 17th of October, Hamish Mackay and I are hosting we're running a two-day Introduction to Biodynamics workshop up at Changing Habits Farm. Cindy and Howard Amira up there and Brogan and the family will be hosting the two-day workshop as we've done before, and it's going to be a ripper. Beautiful part of the world. They've done such a wonderful job with their farm. They're using permaculture and natural sequence farming and all sorts of other cool stuff. Beautiful food. I've got to say, one of the best catered for workshops we've ever done. So the 16th and 17th of October. I go to charliearnott.com.au for details on that one, and I think that's where you can book as well. So we've got Burrawa workshop happening here with HM and Brian Wehlburg starting from October in Burrawa. 9-10 we've got the Stockmanship course here at Burrawa of September, and 16-17 up at Mullaney for a biodynamics workshop. Enough of me. I hope you're looking forward to listening to this interview with Brian as much as I did recording it, capturing it on the regenerative journey. Brian, welcome to the regenerative journey, and welcome to. It's hard for me to do my normal intro when I'm not doing a face-to-face, Brian. I usually say, "Welcome to your kitchen" or to your front porch. But you have to tell me where you are so I can welcome to it. Are you welcoming you to your office? Are you in your office at home today?
I'm in the dining room at home in Port Macquarie on the mid-north coast.
And is it, from what I know about you, Brian, I don't think you spend much time at home. would that be fair to say?
We're on the road a fair bit, Charlie, which is fantastic. And again, to me, it's a clear indicator of the change that we're going through and the change that is desperately needed, where people are starting to do things differently. And I think it's an exciting time we live in at the moment, I think.
It is exciting. A lot of people would say it's very turbulent, and there's a lot of change afoot, and a lot of people would say it could be change for the worse, culturally and societally. And what's your sense? Are you optimistic about the future of our species?
Yeah, Charlie, I have a lovely saying on the front of our training materials that I actually forget whose quote it is, but the quote says, "Make your vision so strong that all your fears disappear." And I think that's what holistic management does for people. It really creates a strong positive image that allows people to take what gets thrown at them. And let's face it, we're in, as you said, we're in turbulent times, but it allows us to take all of those things, either find opportunities or find ways through it. I often kind of, in class would flick back to some of the research I picked up from people who've researched those folks who survived the prisoner of war camps during the Second World War. And whether it was the Japanese or the German, whoever it was, they looked at the people who managed to literally wend their way through all the terrible things that happened and come out the other end. And the research constantly shows that it wasn't the smartest or the dumbest or the quickest or the biggest or the smallest that actually managed to manipulate through all the terrible things that were thrown at them. Obviously, there's a bit of luck involved, but it was the people who had the vision. People who had the vision that, what was it going to be like to walk over those gates for the last time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a huge component of the human species, that if we can have really clear vision and if it's really positive, people eventually do the impossible. And so, I think holistic management helps people create that really positive vision for themselves, their families, their communities, their businesses. And then, it's all positive stuff. So you take whatever comes, and how can you either use it to move forward to what you really want, or take measures to work your way around it. So I maybe that's part of my positivity is having a really clear vision of what I want the world to be like for myself and for my children and for my community.
Well, Brian, I know what I know about you. We often, whenever we talk or see each other, we joke that we only ever see each other in airports. because that's what it was like for a couple of occasions. But I know you're constantly travelling, constantly doing workshops. And so apart from commending you for doing that, you clearly do that because you're very purposeful doing that. And I don't doubt it's because you think that, or somewhat, it's going to be, you're helping to make a positive change. And I know people have done your course, and I know the results of that, and that's exactly what you are doing. This does start to sound like a bit of a let's pump Brian's tires up a bit, but I think it's only fair to say that the amount of work you put in and helping people is absolutely showing, because I know countless people who've done the course, and when I just travels and talking to people and saying, they say they're doing an HM course, and I say, oh, is Brian running that? Oh yeah, Brian. It's like Brian's running every single course there is under the sun. Now, Brian, enough of pumping up your tyres. Let's get to you, because I know there's a fair bit to get through in the sort of the period of time we've got together. And this is certainly in lieu of us actually ever potentially getting to sit down face to face. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity to dig up some gold, some Brian gold. Tell me, where did life begin for you? Where did little Brian sort of hit the ground back in the day? Where and where?
So Charlie, I was born 1960 in what was then Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. I was a third generation. My family's third generation Zimbabwean, and we went through going in the army and all that kind of stuff. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had a real passion for wildlife, and so as I was going through school, my sort of drivers were, I wanted to join the national parks, and I mean, Zimbabwe today still has wonderful, magnificent wildlife, and so that was sort of my driver. Dad had been a tobacco farmer all his life, and tobacco was the big industry in Rhodesia and Zimbabwe at the time. I think we vied with Brazil to be the biggest flue-cured tobacco producers in the world. So somehow or other, I ended up becoming a tobacco farmer, a cropper, but also got involved with the wildlife industry. And so we were running a conservancy, which is now 100,000 odd acres, on a commercial scale, so both tourism and hunting. And that's where I really got involved with Savory, because Alan Savory, that is the founder of Holistic Management. Because one of the problems with the wildlife industry is, and it's still the same today, animals breed and breed and breed, and then you have a disaster, a drought, a fire, a flood, and they literally die and die and die, or they disappear. And so building resilience in those landscapes became critical. And so then I attended a couple of schools with Alan Savory, and got totally inspired, and went back and made some horrendous mistakes. But it all started falling to places. We had streams running again. We turned off troughs. We quadrupled our cattle numbers, and we created that resilience. So the wildlife numbers built up and stayed, and so that created a profitable business on that side for us as well. So that's sort of where it started. And then
can I just
the economy and what have you.
Can I just interrupt there? Jump in. So what were some of the principles that you applied? What were some of the changes you made on the back of that training that had that impact of the ecological impact?
Yeah. I sometimes wonder if I should actually even talk about that. Charlie, we ended up with just over 10,400 paddocks, and we moved our animals somewhere between 40 and 80 times a day.
Wow.
So I mean, we were packing them like sardines.
And how did you? And the boundaries of those paddocks, were they a physical or wire boundary? Yep. They were.
So single wire, semi-permanent. So again, there's a story to that. I started off just because it was fairly wooded, timbered country, and so I started off with just knocking those little plastic insulators into the bases of the trees, and then threading and making these long laneways, 1.4 k's long and roughly 50 meters wide, but it just depended where the trees were. So it could be 70 meters, it could be sort of 30 meters. But the story was, literally after the first year, a lot of those insulators popped off because the tree grew. that was quite interesting. So then I went to those little round bobbins with a 2-inch nail.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, after a year or two, the bobbins popped off because the tree grew. So I ended up having to put a washer
Damn those trees.
on the nail.
Yep.
Yep, a washer on the nail for the bobbin. And with the state of the economy there going into a bit of a spiral, those washers ended up costing me 22 cents a washer.
Sure.
And so I'm sure it's probably illegal. I went along to the banks and got bags of 1 cent coins and knocked a hole in them, and then used them to secure the bobbins to the trees. And I had this kind of vision in 100 years' time, some scientists kind of delving in the deepest, darkest Africa, and with their little measuring devices and coming up with these. What the hell was going on with these 1 cent coins with holes drilled in them? What was going on? Is it a kind of religious sacrifice or something?
And
no, it was just me coming up with a plan.
A new currency. They hadn't sort of a new, classic.
Yeah. But interesting one on that one, Charlie. I mean, we started off, I was really doing the cropping, and Kerry, my partner, was, she wanted to do the livestock and the cattle. So we got probably about 40 pedigree Sussex, which is like a Red Angus. And we were so excited. They were all pregnant. We were so excited for the calves to arrive. And we popped up one morning and expecting to see a couple of calves on the ground. We saw two chewed up carcasses. And our first 2 calves, the leopards had just chewed the hell out of them. And I think, I then leased the grazing to someone else for a while, and we just kept the cattle around the house. And he lost about 45% of his calves to leopards. Cool. But the minute we started bunching those animals, virtually we had no losses whatsoever. I'd go down in the morning, and you'd see the leopard footprints along the edge of just a single electric wire. And a leopard could jump 3 meters over the fence or crawl underneath it. It wasn't a barrier. But because those animals were so tightly bunched, literally the only time we lost any animals once we had started planned grazing, holistic planned grazing, was when those, and invariably it was a Brahmin, they'd jump the fence and go and have a calf in the bush somewhere, and you'd find skin and bones. So that was another huge positive for us, was the drop in predation. And of course theft as well, having all the animals together like that. They were easy to watch over in the country as it was.
What numbers were you, numbers are you talking about there when you bunch them up?
Yeah, so we started off with 183 cows. We ended up with 650. And again, we started off, I think in the beginning we were feeding about 2.5 kgs of, in those days we could feed chicken litter. So we were feeding chicken litter as a form of protein.
Okay.
So we started off with 183 head, and we were feeding 2.5 kgs a day of feed. And we ended up with 650 head, and I think we were feeding 150 grams, just a mineral supplement. But literally the water costs had disappeared, the tick problems had disappeared, the predation problems had disappeared. So it was a big impact in terms of labour, but in a country where labour was plentiful. It was a very easy thing to do, and to quadruple your numbers like that was astounding. And I always say, should I mention that in Australia? But I mean, we've got people moving a couple of thousand head every single day, building temporary paddocks every single day, and most of them record better time management. I mean, you would know, it's so easy once those animals get into that routine of moving. It's just so easy to move them. We talk about mustering animals or moving stock, and I think the general vision in people's mind is a lot of yeehaw and dust and dogs and God knows what. But literally, once you've bunched your animals, it just becomes, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's the best part of the day.
I was going to say, it really needs to be a pleasure, doesn't it? Otherwise, it becomes a chore. You head out there, you're a bit cranky, you're anticipating not good things. They pick up on that. They take off. Busted everything. So what was it? What was it about apart from the reduced predation? What were those animals, because they were bunched up? What were they doing? They're running in reasonably narrow areas. 20 to 40 times a day. That's like every half an hour or more, I guess, unless it's
Yeah. So somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes a move.
Wow.
So literally, I mean, they're in a 50 by 20 square. And, just watching the animals, as soon as the animals' heads came up, literally it was time to move. So, really watching the animals. And again, I always say to folks, when you start managing your animals holistically and starting using animal impact and density as a positive tool, you're driving a Ferrari. And you're not, the old Morris has been put in the shed. You're driving a Ferrari, and you have to have the skills and the knowledge to drive, that kind of machine. And it is that, your herd of animals suddenly becomes a really powerful machine for improving environments, making rivers flow again, putting carbon back in the soil, all those positive things that we're trying to do. We're taking control of the steering wheel. And animals are not like the tractor. You can go and park them in the garage and turn the key off. Your cows and sheep are out there 24 hours a day doing stuff. And either they're doing good stuff for the environment or they're doing bad stuff. I always relate it to a hammer. You can use a hammer to build a house, or you can use a hammer to smash a house down. It just depends how you use it. And so learning how to use livestock, and it doesn't matter whether it's cows, pigs, chickens, ducks, guinea pigs, we can use them all as a positive tool if we manage them correctly.
And I guess the real critical element there, or variable there, is time, isn't it? Like if you're moving them between 10 minutes and 30 minutes at a time, if they should be moved in 10 minutes and you're moving them in 15 or 20, like that is, whilst it's only another 5 or 10 minutes, that is a critical. That's when you're turning the hammer around and bashing your house down, aren't you? Like that's when the tool becomes a weapon.
Absolutely. So if you're 10 minutes late and you're moving 40 times a day, there's 400 minutes. Divide by 60. That's how many hours of stress you're going to be putting on those animals.
The production stress.
And if you don't want to do that, so you got to be on the money. And I always say to folks, but it's all plans. It doesn't matter whether it's grazing plans or financial plans or succession plans. The minute you've created a plan, success lies in the monitoring. Success lies in being there, observing, making those little adjustments. Because, hey, we're dealing with something that's so complex and constantly changing and dynamic that if we're not, it's a bit like hopping in a 747 and the pilot sort of goes to the loo for half the flight, without an autopilot. The chances of you arriving where you want to be is just about zero. So we got to have our hand on the wheel when we start managing those animals as a tool. Yeah, absolutely. But as I said, we've got people moving animals all the time, and all of them report better time management. They would have gone, filled the Toyota with diesel, gone and spent 10 hours, and they would have checked 30 waters, and they might have seen 5% of their animals. Whereas today, where they've got one mob and they're moving them every day or every couple of days, they go up there, they build a new paddock, 3 hours, they check one water, they see 100% of their stock, and they're home within a couple of hours, and they've got time to do the tax or paint the kitchen or take the family for a picnic. So generally, all the people that I know that are have changed their management are recording better time management and less time spent with the animals. So
any other, before we move on, any other sort of principles that you applied back then of note? I mean, there's lots of 1%ers and things that add up, I guess, but anything else that maybe you applied to your own head or in the office, or that wasn't necessarily something you did in the paddock? Any other changes you made that were significant, that had a big impact?
I suppose the other big thing there is because we employed a lot of people. So, we had a farm village, and all the farms had their own little communities there. So we employed probably 130 odd people, all up for the cropping and everything. And there would have been 650 people living on the property in a village. And again, through holistic management, I think our communications, our relationship with our employees was just so much better. I think we both valued each other hugely, and they weren't just part of the business. They were part of who we were and who the environment was as well. So I think, that was another big spin-off with this kind of decision-making framework is holistic. So it's about the people, it's about the environment, it's about everything. And the problem is humans really struggle with that complexity. It's often just give me the figures, tell me what to do. It's got to be a step-by-step guide. Humans are great at step-by-step, but when we put them in a complex situation, we'd really struggle. We really do. I always say to folks, put yourself in the race and count, cows, heifers, and steers coming down the race simultaneously. Hardly anybody can do it. Put yourself on the side of a highway and count cars, buses, and trucks. Again, people just can't do it. And that's only 3 things. And, you hear people talking about, 6 billion organisms in a cup of soil. And, if you're managing that land, you are managing every single one of those organisms. And as humans, we just really struggle with that complexity. So, to me, that's the real power of holistic management, is allowing us to manage complexity. When we look at where humans have been hugely successful in what they do, computers, transport, buildings, weapons, all of those things are very linear, and you can have a step-by-step guide to building a phone or a rifle. Anybody can do it if you give them the step-by-step guides. Whereas managing environments, managing agriculture, managing communities is complex. And that's where we're constantly having problems as humans in those arenas, where our decisions in those arenas constantly seem to have problems and hit walls. And that's where holistic management really steps in to allow us to manage dynamic complexity. And I always say, I think farming has got to be one of the most complex businesses that there is. If you're managing widgets, you've got a roof over your head, you've got a light switch, you've got an aircon, you can control all those things. Whereas, farming, you're out there with the elements, droughts, floods, fires, God knows what else. And now we're throwing animals into the mix. It's like having 3,000 kids running around your house. We don't control them, we try and manage them. And so having a process for managing complexity is really important when you're managing a complex situation, dynamically complex like farming.
Yeah, I guess when you've got biology involved so much, the people, all businesses have people, so that's the same. But you've got, ecology, you've got your animals, you've got your plants, interaction, all those landscape functions. That's kind of the internal farm framework. And then you think about the markets that we are dealing with. We're generally price takers.
Yeah.
And we're not, we tend to have so much to do before stuff gets to the farm gate that, like, the whole thought of doing marketing any other way but just through an agent to the yards, that's the added complexity that understandably not many farmers want to add to their list of tasks or production tasks, because I can't agree more.
And the reality is, I always go back to a fellow called Ernesto Ciroli, who's done some great work all around the world, but quite a lot of good work in Australia. He runs a program called Enterprise Facilitation, and he always talks about there are 3 types of people in the world. There's your product person, and I think a lot of farmers fall in that product zone. They love making stuff and fixing stuff and building stuff. We've got our finance people who love finances, and then we've got our marketing people who love marketing. And Ciroli's concept there is, we're all good at one, and we're all passionate about one. Most of us are good at 2, but there's no one who's good at all 3. And I think a lot of people get hooked onto this thing, and they read work by Joel Salatin and others and think, yes, we can do this, and then find themselves trying to do the marketing, and they're just not marketing people. So again, having good communications and having good community around you, which again is a key concept of managing holistically, being able to connect with the people around you, being able to find those people who do like marketing, or maybe finding the people who do like finances. If you feel finances isn't your gig, rather find someone that you trust, that you're okay with, to do it for you. You still have to have an idea, because you're the one making decisions and spending the money. But take that onerous stuff away from you to help you have a better life, and spend more time doing the stuff that you really like doing. So let's acknowledge we're not good at all of them, but if you want to find people who can fill that gap for you, good communications, being trustworthy, all those things are essential.
Yep.
And again, that comes through, I believe, with holistic management.
Yeah, I think outsourcing your weaknesses is a good thing. Like that they often say, play to your strengths and work on your strength. Because that comes naturally, and the effort you'd have to put into improving your weaknesses could be better spent somewhere else, and you might as well just pay someone else. Brian, so what happened then? You were moving stock 5,000 times a day. You were making large ecological improvements and impacts there. How long did your family stay
there? We stayed there until 2001, but by sort of 1998. I mean, the economy in Zimbabwe was amazing. I mean, 1997, I believe it was the fastest growing economy in Africa. So, sanctions were still on South Africa. So it was, just about everything you put your hand to turned to gold. We were doing paprika for colorant. So there was a big push away from artificial colorants. So we're doing paprika that was sent all across to Spain to extract the colors. We did about 100 acres of Tagetes erectus, the big tall marigold. And again, just for color. And that we used to export to America so they could put it in their chicken feed to make their eggs look nice and orange. Not that an orange egg is a good indicator of the nutrient density and the quality of the egg. But yeah, just about everything we touched was pretty good. And then sadly there was just a collapse with the government really. And so I came across to a conference in New Zealand, I think in 1999. And the writing was sort of on the wall at that point. Farms were being just taken away. And so we came across to New Zealand for a conference, and then I came up having a look in Queensland, all the way up the coast looking for Queensland. Went and had a chat to Terry McClusker at the time, and sort of see if he had a job for me. And ended up with some fantastic folks just north of Roma in central Queensland. And I think they were actually looking for a bulldozer driver, but I'd never driven a bulldozer. But anyway, they offered me a job. So I went home and we sold up as much as we could. There wasn't much a market for anything really. And I still have a title deed to a farm that sort of no longer exists anymore. But for us, it was just a fantastic move. I mean, coming to Australia was literally the best decision I think we've ever made. So we ended up in central Queensland, a fantastic community, highly productive country. And most of those producers were already, managing their animals differently, doing some fantastic stuff. So we fitted in right perfectly there. It was great. Distances in Australia were a thing I had to juggle for a while, 9-hour drive to take the kids to school was a bit of a hectic thing. 9 hours. But
so
it was fantastic. It's a fantastic place.
Were you up near Injune or somewhere, were you?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, Arcadia Valley. Fantastic place.
Mate.
Just really, really nice and lovely people.
Yeah, awesome.
So we were there for eight years, I think, and within the first sort of year of us coming to Australia, the educators in Australia at the time, Bruce Ward, Brian Marshall, Mark Gardner, had a gathering in Sydney, and I managed to make it down for that, and I met Helen Lewis, who's up at Warwick, who was also an educator, and so Helen and I formed a company called Inside Outside Management. And that's the company we run today. So I think we started our first course in 2002 in Queensland down at Glenmorgan. And we used to co-teach, and we used to get other educators in. Brian Marshall came in, Jason Virtue. So a lot of the other educators came in. And so we started building that as a side. And again, the people we worked with were fantastic in letting me take that time off to go and run training courses. It wasn't as hectic to this today, but they were just really fantastic folks to work for. And then that lasted for about 8 years. And then with all 3 children going to boarding school and it being quite a distance away, we started looking for other opportunities, and that's when we bought 600 odd acres down here just inland from Port Macquarie. And I always laugh at that because having gone from sort of hot, dry Central Africa to hot, dry, red Central Queensland, we end up here on the coast here where, you dig a hole and clean water pours out the ground, you walk through the forest pricking mandarins, and I called it paradise. And then I discovered ticks and leeches and copper deficiencies and all those other things that, every environment has its ups and downs, you just got to learn to manage them. But So we ran the property here. We did grass-fed beef, pastured pork, and eggs, and did farmers markets, did box beef into Sydney, Brisbane, and a few other places. But again, really stormed on with the training, and I can't quite remember what the date was, but through Ian Chapman, who is an educator but also worked at TAFE, we got holistic management into the TAFE system in New South Wales.
Wow.
And we developed a diploma in holistic management, which was nationally accredited, so it aligned with all the degrees, ag degrees. And that was truly amazing for holistic management in Australia. It really gave us a fantastic start. So we were really busy with that for about 8 years. And the diploma course started off with a 6-month statement of attainment, and then went into an 18-month implementation. So people came, they learnt, they created grazing charts for themselves, they created holistic context, they did the decision matrix, they created a financial plan. They literally went through all the knowledge, but then because of the system, they had time to implement it and share that information amongst others in the class. It was just a fantastic program, and it was a great heads up for us. It also got a lot of the educators working together, which again was a huge plus, so we could share resources. And we had people like Paul Griffiths, who'd been an ABC anchorman, helping us with like communication skills and things like that. Brian Marshall, who's been around forever. So a lot of that sharing of information I think was critical. And sadly that sort of, as I think government withdrew some of the funding, that got shelved. But then Southern Cross University came up with their degree in Regen Ag, and again, hats off to them for taking quite a brave stand, I think, for a university to turn around and say, we're going to promote this, when a lot of universities are still kind of looking down their noses at regenerative agriculture. And what a great step, because it then starts allowing politicians and decision makers, national decision makers, the opportunity to say, but Southern Cross University does this, or so. Again, it's all steps to me in the right direction. I often look at farmers markets, and just the explosion in farmers markets today is, to me, a really clear indicator that people are wanting change. And Australia, 86% of Australian population lives in towns and cities, and a lot of them have lost connection with the land that provides good food, clean water, and clean air. So just that drive for farmers markets, because they're not convenient. You've got to stand there in the rain or the cold, or you get to the counter and the bloody sausages have run out, or whatever it is. They're not convenient, but people are supporting them. And I see all these changes. When Coles and Woolies come up and say they're going to do away with cage eggs in 26 or whenever it is, I mean, that's a massive, massive change.
Yeah.
And what a wonderful change. It's going to create opportunities for a huge number of people, and hopefully create a better environment from it. So lots of stuff happening. And then 3 years ago, because we were in a partnership on the farm, there were four other partners, and one of the partners wanted to pull out to buy property up the coast in Queensland. So after 11 years, we folded that business, and I was getting more and more busy, so Kerry was having to pick up running the farm more and more, which I was putting a bit of strain on her. So for the first time in my life, we moved into a town. I've never lived in a town before, and I always laugh, because keys and curtains have never really been on my agenda, and suddenly we need both of them.
That's exciting.
But again, there are some fantastic advantages of living, in a tight-knit community. We've got a lovely house, and it's in a cul-de-sac, and it's so again, just change and learning to pick up the good things and run with them.
Keys and curtains.
So that's sort of where we are up to at the moment.
Keys and curtains. That's a classic. Brian, tell me about before, because I want you to explain, because I have a bit of an agenda here. You're running, or kindly going to run one of your workshops, your HM workshops, courses here at Burrawa toward the end of the year. So I want to give that a plug. But before we sort of step through what that looks like for people to consider, understand, and as I was saying earlier, I know so many people who've done it. I am one who has not done it. That's why I'm keen to do it. And I thought the most chance of me having to do it was if I brought you to me. But my oh, now I've lost my point. Before we launch into the actual nuts and bolts of it, tell me about the sort of the whole concept of the decision making process that, from what I understand, is really the central one of the central principles. I mean, it's one of the central principles of life, isn't it? But specifically, what you teach. While you start, I'm just going to put my blind down here. Talking about curtains, I've got the sun on my dirty beard here. So you start, and I'm just going to see if I can adjust this.
That's fine, Charlie. So holistic management at its core is just a decision-making framework. One of the things that Alan Savory discovered was humans basically use a very simple framework, and we all use the same framework. So if you think of any decision you've ever made, the first thing, and we're talking conscious decisions, the first thing you need is a goal or objective. So the very simple framework starts with a goal or objective. Feed myself breakfast, get myself to town, go and move the sheep, get the animals to the yards, whatever that goal or objective is. And then we use our past experience, expert knowledge, and we gather information to substantiate that goal or objective. And so that's a simple framework we always use. And as I said, it's been fantastic in linear management, like building a watch, like building a car, like making stuff. However, when we manage stuff, when we manage environments, manage people, because it's dynamic and it's complex, that step-by-step approach is constantly failing us. And so Savory developed this framework that allows us to help us manage this constantly, I'll always call it swirling soup, this constant dynamic change, and create a really strong vision for people so they can manage beyond just the day-to-day goals and objectives. We're not going to throw those away because they're so powerful in helping us build things and make things. But in terms of management, we need to look beyond that. And so the core of holistic management is creating what we call a holistic context. And the outcome of that is a holistic vision where you describe the people, describe the landscape, 50 years, 100 years time. So your grandchildren, great-grandchildren can experience the kind of life that you want. The other component of holistic context, and again, quite a difficult thing, it's probably the hardest component of the 8-day training, is getting people to get in touch with feelings again. I think, from an early age, certainly my childhood, if you were told, don't go to feelings, don't cry, don't be a wuss, go and eat cement, and we pushed away from our feelings. But, what we know, and medically what we know, and psychology what we know, all our decisions are based on our feelings. We use logic to substantiate that, but ultimately it's our feelings. Now, if we can't actually articulate our feelings, if we can't write them down, how the hell are we going to make decisions towards them? So we're constantly making decisions that make us feel bad. Not all the time. I mean, we can be amazingly successful, but when we're managing complex things like environments, like communities, where it's constant, we've got to have something beyond goals and objectives. And so that's the power of holistic management. Part of that vision is the environment. How's the environment got to be if it's going to support this kind of lifestyle? And get people to describe the creeks, describe your paddocks, describe the soils, and create that deep connection with the environment, because ultimately nothing exists without that environment being healthy. We couldn't have a government, we couldn't have an orchestra, literally we couldn't have a church if the environment isn't healthy. So let's describe how that environment's got to be in terms of health, and then start making decisions towards that. And again, we developed a little framework that allows us to sift through all the options, because there are always options, but sift through those options to move us in that direction. So that's the framework side. And from the environmental side came some key holistic outcomes, should I say. The first one, and I think probably the most powerful one, and I just wish all countries in the world would acknowledge the concept of brittleness. And brittleness is atmospheric humidity at soil surface, because it's so critical all life requires moisture. And if there's no moisture, their life doesn't exist. And so biology doesn't function without that atmospheric humidity at soil surface. And for large parts of the globe, probably 2/3 of the globe, there are periods of aridity where there is no moisture. And so what does life do? Life either goes into the soil, where hopefully there's soil moisture, or it retreats into the stomachs of animals where there's moisture. And I often say to folks, where's this perfect place in the world where the temperature's constantly the same, the humidity's perfect, no fluctuations? Where's this perfect place in the world? And people say, Hawaii or the Congo or Darwin, North, it's always 35 degrees in Darwin. They'll all come up with these places, and I say, no, it isn't. It's in the stomach of a ruminant. It doesn't matter if it's in the Arctic Circle or it's in the middle of the Sahara. That environment in the stomach of a ruminant is just perfect, and it remains constant. And so that allows biology and biological processes to continue to function when atmospheric humidity is so low that outside of those areas, biology doesn't happen. So that was one of the key outcomes, we call them key insights, of Savory's thinking. The other one was a fellow called Jan Christian Smuts, who was a soldier statesman in the Great War. And he wrote a book in 1927 called Holism and Evolution. And I think he's the guy who really brought this word holistic back into our vocab. It comes from the Greek word holos, meaning all-encompassing. But you look at things, and one of the examples I use in class is water. It's hydrogen and oxygen, virtually. And if we look at hydrogen and oxygen in isolation, they have completely different properties to water. They're gas, they're colorless, they're odorless, they're either combustible or explosive. If we tried to manage water with that shore knowledge as a background, how would we manage water? You certainly wouldn't walk around with a glass without a lid on it, because it would float away. The last thing you'd do is pour water onto a fire, because you'd die. So Smuts brought back this concept of we need to look big picture. We need to look at whole functioning families, whole functioning farms, whole functioning countries, whole functioning systems. And today I think we're starting to appreciate more and more, especially with global climate change and carbon. It doesn't matter who's putting it up there, it's going to impact us all. And so we're all connected at the end of the day. So that work of Smuts really got us thinking. A lot of farmers think their farm boundary, their barbed wire is a boundary, is somehow a barrier. And again, we all know, birds fly over it. Your cows and sheep sometimes go through it. But where do your kids go to school? Where do you get supplies from? It's not a boundary. There are no boundaries. And so we need to learn to live with this concept that everything's connected. So that's, again, one of the key thinkings that come out through the holistic management training, is this concept of holism and the fact that we are all connected. So those are just a couple of the key indicators from the training. And then, of course, as I said, we look seriously at the decision making. And then from all of that come some processes. And again, I always push away from the word system, because I often find systems are fairly rigid, and they have rules and laws, and they have inputs and outputs. Whereas if you're literally in this swirling soup of environment, the last thing you want is something rigid, because they'll fail. And when we look at systems, how many agricultural systems have we had? How many grazing systems have we had? And they literally will all fail. We have to become process orientated. So looking at the ecosystem processes, the water cycle, the mineral cycle, the energy flow, etc., and using that concept of processes, help develop things like the holistic grazing planning process. And once again, it is a process. And from that, there's been a lot of similar sort of things that have developed from ultra high density MIG management, intensive grazing. What was the other one? AMP. Adaptive management planning.
That's it. I heard that one recently. Yeah.
So lots of them. Yeah, and they all basically stem from Savory's work. And on the grazing planning side, it's quite interesting because Alan had come up with these ideas and was going around the world seeing farmers, some farmers doing amazing stuff for their soils, for their land, for biology, for biodiversity, but then financially going broke, or socially, families disintegrating, or social problems. And so he started looking and saying, well, it's just not about just changing the way we manage our livestock, etc. We need to look at how we actually make decisions. And so he was going around the world looking for frameworks, processes that manage complexity. And he actually came up with it, being a military background himself, came up with the ideas from Sandhurst Military Academy in the UK. And they had developed over 100 odd years ago this process called an aid memoir, which allowed fairly simple soldiers in stressful battled conditions to make decisions. And it was a nice step-by-step guide. So all Savory did, well, let's say all, but what he did was he took that military aid and adapted it to grazing management. So, obviously in the military situation, you want that decision to be made literally within seconds, otherwise you died. In the livestock planning, we've got weeks, months, and sometimes even years for that planning process to happen. So it's had 150 odd years of testing in battlefield conditions, and now the process has been out in the grazing landscape for probably 50, 60 years, and I've never come across it failing. People fail to do it, and for various reasons, but the actual planning process just it doesn't fail.
Yeah.
And there's stacks of science now backing that up, and I think we're finding, especially with the carbon people coming on board, that people who are managing their environments holistically and using their livestock as a positive tool, absolutely we sequester carbon. And that's how they. We've had grazing animals and plants on this planet for 300 million years. I believe life started about 800 million years with sponges and algae. I don't quite know how you call a sponge an animal, but anyway, apparently it's an animal. But animals as we know it today have been out there for 300 million years, and they've evolved with those plants. And literally 8,000 years ago, some human domesticated one of them, and suddenly we had livestock, and suddenly now livestock are bad. But they'd been out there for 300 million years. And again, a lot of holistic management is just looking and saying, well, how did it function before humans got involved? And I know David Marsh always says, get the humans out the way, step back, and let nature do what nature does best. And so a lot of the holistic thinking comes with that as a background. Let's observe nature and see how it functions, and can we mimic it?
Brian, back to back to the beginning of that sort of decision making process. The idea of creating a vision, and what do you see, and how will you what will your grandchildren sort of see and inherit and so on. It's really, I guess, in some way, it's about manifesting, isn't it? Like you're literally you're not prescribing. That's the wrong word, but you are visualizing. And I was doing some reading on this morning. You're visualizing and you're making it real in your mind, which in turn, over time, with the right focus and the right, this book was talking about being on the right radio station, referring to sort of frequency and resonance and so on, and being on a higher plane of consciousness and frequency, but to start by the using one's imagination, seeing it in your mind, writing it down, sharing it with people. It makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and having just wound up on the Olympics, self-visualization is such a huge component of sport today. Where people visualize what success looks like, visualize what that ball looks like going through the post, visualize what that perfect dive, off the 5-meter board is. They've got that running around in their brain, and it becomes reality. I always jokingly say to someone, in class, imagine walking along the pavement and someone bumps into you and says, "Oh, you're an idiot." Most people tend to react, and we'd turn around and say, "Well, you're an idiot. You bumped into me." But if you were walking around with that real powerful vision in your head of how you wanted your community to be, connected, supportive, caring, considerate, if you were walking around with that vision in your head, and you were walking down the street and someone bumped into you and said, "Oh, you're an idiot," how do you now react? You'd react completely differently. You'd probably say, "Are you okay? I'm sorry, can I help you?" What's going to take you towards what you really want? And so often we just react. And, once you've got a really clear vision and it's 100% what you want, the chances are you'll start making decisions towards that. But again, it has to be holistic, it has to include the environment. So, we often see missions statements and visions and what have you on, bank walls and places like that. Most of the time, I think they're done for advertising. We'll do our best for our clients and blah, blah, blah. But, so a holistic context is very different to those, because it really captures feelings and values. And then from that, we create how the environment's got to be in, and people are the environment. I think humans for a long time have somehow seen ourselves separate, and almost like we were given a God-given right to, the environment was over there and we controlled our environments. We don't control our environments. We are our environment. And I think holistic management really gets people comfortable with that idea that we are our environment. I know when I went to school, the knowledge was that nothing lived in the human stomach because it was too acid. And that's not that long ago. And today we understand that without all that biology, living organisms inside our stomach, we wouldn't exist. They tell me there's 1,000 bacteria herding all over every square inch of my skin, eating dead cells and sucking up oils and what have you. And again, without those things, life would be a bit miserable. Always refer back to the fellow who wrote the book, and he says, by way of thanks, they give you body odor. But we are our environment. And I think somehow or other we've got to get that through to humans, because for ages now we've been told, the environment's over there, it's a resource for us to manage. And it's about managing ourselves. You trash the environment, you're trashing yourself, you're trashing the environment, your kids, your community. We don't exist without a good environment.
Well, they say we're the only species that shits in its own nest, like that. Because nothing else.
Oh, I don't know. I used to collect birds' eggs. Anybody who's delved into an owl's nest, no, not a nice place.
Brian, I want to talk about the people aspect of it, because, in your training, I imagine there's a fair bit of, well, maybe not technical, but certainly the practical approach, time-controlled grazing or managed grazing, however you want to sort of put that. There's ecological sort of practices and management. There's a lot of on-farm and practical stuff. That's all got to be managed by and a business run by people, like a family. Tell me, what are some of the impacts that you've seen in family dynamics or couple dynamics or individuals as a result of doing the HM course? Like what are some of the what are some of the things you've that have resulted from having done it?
Yeah, Charlie. I always love it when people come to training as a family, husband and wife, partners, whatever it is, son and daughters. Because we're talking about change. We're talking about a different way of doing stuff. And, the biggest hindrances to change are change itself, because you're taking people out of their comfort zone. I think people would rather carry on doing stuff even though they know it's not really what they want. And, of course, apart from just doing something different, it's that at resistance and the current knowledge we have today. So we'd rather stick with our current knowledge and then rather not change. So by sharing learning with a partner, with a business partner, with your son and daughter, whatever it is, or managers, it allows people to come to training and take these new ideas and chat about them, share them. And so, just doing that alone creates a much stronger bond. But because we're dealing with feelings and values and deep stuff, I come across often, husband and wife teams that have been farming for 50 years, and they never talk to each other about their feelings. They talk about moving the cows and how much they got for the sale yards and how much fertilizer they're going to put and what cover crop seed they're going to sow. They yarn on about that stuff, but when it gets to feelings, it's just, again, it's the way we've been programmed not to go there, because feelings are messy, they're lifelong, they're unpredictable. So I think for a lot of people, just being able to communicate around feelings and values with their partner, the person closest to them in life, and be open and honest. And I just see people soaring, literally. I see those relationships just taking off. I think in all the years, had one relationship that I know of that went the other way. Having delved deep into feelings and values, they just said, no, this partnership's not going to work. And again, hats off to them, because they went off and created good lives for themselves. But 99% of the time, people go away with a deeper connection with themselves, with their communities, with their employees, their partners, because we get them to delve into feelings and values, because ultimately it's feelings and values that drives the decision making. I often refer to some of the data on, and particularly car salesmen. They talk about when you can give them all the facts and figures, about what the car does and how fast it can go and fuel consumption and all that kind of stuff. But when you actually get them into the car, when they can feel and experience that feeling and experience sitting in the car, that's when most people make the decision to buy the car or not. So again, feelings are such a huge component of decision making, and largely we try and push them aside because they're so messy. Just give me the facts and figures. And so a lot of farming families, literally that's how they communicate, around facts and figures. But ultimately, it's the feelings we want, and getting people to open up and dig deep into feelings. And we really focus on the positive feelings, because it's the positive feelings that drive change. The negative feelings tend to make us hunker down, hold up for a while, and hopefully they'll pass.
I guess the process of sitting down with your partner or family members, and maybe for the first time, creating that vision and getting everyone's input, and I imagine in that process of probably more a husband and wife, sort of partners situation, the never before spoken vision or wishes or desires or needs, are finally put on paper. One look at the other going, I never knew you wanted to have an orchard, or I don't know, you know what I mean? Like I can imagine that'd be that process of discovering. It is a process of discovery in a partnership of probably the things, as you say, never been spoken, never come up, never thought were important, and to actually articulate it and then document, capture that for its use to then guide the future of that business and the family's story, the family's journey would be really powerful and pretty. Is it sometimes, I guess you're probably always surprised, or are there any occasions that stand out as being significant sort of moments when people have discovered their partner wants something they've never known before, or is there any funny stories you can tell about that process?
No, not really, Charlie. I mean, you can see people, and they often get emotional. And I mean, I've had older, big burly farmers, very blokey bloke guys, and when you get them down on their hands and knees in the paddock and start talking about the soil surface and how's that going to relate in the future, because that's from their management, to their grandkids and kids and what have you. And I mean, people do, they get emotional, and I think that's good. It's because it's emotions that are going to drive the decision making. So we can put those things aside. So I don't think there's any standout changes, but you always see it when people come, as a team, as husband and wife. You just see them talking in class, you see them sharing ideas. You mentioned just now saying, "Oh, I didn't realize you wanted a vineyard." Now again, appreciate that that's a decision we make. Okay, so when someone says they want a vineyard, you say, okay, well, what are the values and feelings that you think you'll get from the vineyard? And whether it's financial security, whether it's connection with nature, whatever those feelings are, financial security would be the big one. Again, we get them to focus. Let's focus on financial security, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who run vineyards who don't have financial security. So, what's important is the financial security, whether you run a vineyard or you do onions or you run sheep. Those are all choices. And there'll be components of the finances, the environment, and the social as to whether it's a good choice for you and your family to do a vineyard or not. So, just trying to differentiate between what really drives people. Often there's a term with the Toyota company called the 5 whys, and often just using that to get people to dig deep. So, what do you want? Oh, I want a fast car. Why? Oh, because I want to drive fast and people notice me. Well, why? Oh, because I want to be respected. And so you can say, well, lots of people drive fast cars, but the last thing they get given is respect. So what else could you do? What else could you do to get respect? You could go and work at a soup kitchen 2 nights a week. And that would probably give you the respect that you're after. So often, again, that to me, that's a bad decision, not made towards feelings and values. And if we can just uncover those feelings and values to help make our decisions more in line with those, it just leads to a happier life and obviously a happier planet, because you're acknowledging we don't exist without a good, healthy planet.
I love that quote. Brian, let's get to the nuts and bolts of the workshop and the one you're running here at Boorowa, just so people who are interested to know more, to sign up, to get involved. Tell us sort of what's involved. If you've got dates at hand. How do people get along and hear it straight from you?
Excellent, thanks, Charlie. So the Boorowa course coming up again. Thanks to David Marsh and yourself for putting a flag up there and inviting us out. That's wonderful. So we started the course and the training with Helen, and we were running 3-day sessions, and we just found, I don't know, you're away from the farm for 2 days, and day 2 people start thinking, hopefully the cows haven't run out of feed, or the trough in the water's okay, or Granny's still managing the kids all right, or whatever it is. So we trimmed back the training to 2-day sessions. So literally, most folks would probably spend 1 night away from the farm in 2 days, and that seems to have worked really well. And the other thing we've sort of developed on the way is having at least a month, if not 5 weeks, between sessions, and I think that is really critical. So people come to class. We do quite a lot of communication skill stuff as well, because again, that's a key component of working as a team and managing holistically, having good communication skills. So we do a bit of that, and then we'll get into the bulk of the training for the 2-day period. And then people have the opportunity to go home to implement. I normally send a little video clip of something as a refresher every week to students, participants, and then we'll have a Zoom sort of in between the sessions as well. I really struggle to teach on Zoom, but just a way of touching base and creating community, a learning community. So that's fantastic. But really importantly, when we come back together for the following sessions, we'll spend an hour, sometimes 2 hours, just getting feedback from everybody on what have they seen, what have they changed, what have they learnt, what have they developed, and just really capturing those experiences, because I believe that's where the real learning happens. Once we appreciate that every farm's different, every person's different, everybody's finances are different, everybody's animals are different, everybody's knowledge is different. Once we appreciate that everybody's different, bringing people together like that in an open way, and they share their experiences, good or bad. Often things don't work out for whatever reason, but it really creates a strong learning community. And to me, that's where the real learning happens, when people go home and observe or make changes on their own property. So again, a lot of the learning is getting people to focus back on their own place. And then we'll come back and we'll do the next portion of the learning. So generally we always break it up into 4 2-day sessions, 4 or 5 weeks apart, but there will be structured learning in between the sessions. And some of it is out in the paddock. We'll go out and we'll do some ecological monitoring. And again, as I said, we can come up with all these wonderful plans, but ultimately, everybody's different and changes the norm. So we need to monitor success. You put your pen down on a plan, it doesn't matter whether it's a financial plan, grazing plan, things will happen, things will change. So the power of good planning is actually in the monitoring. I always say, folks, if you're looking at financial planning, you can be 1,000% out on every single item on your financial plan. And as long as you monitor, within 2 or 3 months, you'll have a good plan. And I think a lot of people ditch the monitoring. They get excited about creating the grazing plan or the financial plan, and then it gets shelved, and they only look at it months later. And again, the power of good planning lies in the monitoring. So just getting people between sessions to go home, do some invitation, do some monitoring, and share that. So the first session, we'll really focus on the environmental stuff and get people comfortable with looking at all the tools. Holistic management isn't about saying you can't use chemicals, or you can't use this, or you can't use that. It's just saying, please open the tool bag. Look at all the tools, because humans are tool using creatures. Literally, I can't drink water today without a tool. Everything we do today, is a tool. It doesn't matter what it is. We've got to have tools. And so just acknowledging that there's a range of tools there. And so with holistic management, we get people to basically brainstorm all their tools. And it comes back to the same things every time. We've got technology. And again, technology is neither good nor bad. Okay. We've got fire. And again, fire's neither good nor bad. We've got small organisms, grazing animals, and grazing animals give us two tools, basically: the impact, the trampling, the dunging, the urinating, the scratching, and the grazing. And then this concept of resting land, just locking it up. And they're all just tools. And depending on your situation, one might be better than the other, or a combination. But the power of holistic management is to say, right, we've got all of these tools. And I always love Joel Salatin's quote, when he talks about livestock as a tool. I think he says they're solar powered, they reproduce themselves, and they appreciate on your books. Try and do that with a John Deere tractor, or any tractor, should I say? They just, if you can use a living organism tool, whether it's small organisms, compostees, biodynamics, or your livestock as a tool to do a job, you're miles ahead. So that's the first session. The second session, we do the big dive into creating context. And so everybody leaves with a holistic context for themselves and a deep understanding of how we make decisions and how the holistic framework will help them make better decisions and allows them to manage complexity. People, environments, the complex side of things. And we finish off that session normally with a couple of hours on ecological monitoring and getting people comfortable with a very simple way of looking at monitoring. And there are huge advantages to having some good data for your farm, whether it's for your customers, for yourself, and in time for government and councils. If you're seen to be doing good stuff for the land and the community, I think in the future, why not be given discounts on your rates? What a powerful way for councils to start creating positive change in their catchments.
Right.
So if your infiltration rates are improving, if you're sequestering more carbon in your soils, let's give people credit for that. So we'll finish off that. And then session 3, we spend literally a full 2 days going through the planning process for grazing, so holistic planned grazing. And we'll do a couple of case studies, and then people should all leave with the start, if it's appropriate. I mean, we have lots of people coming to classes who don't have livestock, are more focused on the decision making. So if it's appropriate, they will leave with a start of a grazing chart for their property for whatever time of the year and the season we're looking at. And then the last component, last 2 days, we look principally at financial planning. And again, holistic financial planning has some key elements in it that I certainly have never come across in any other financial planning packages. And turning that formula up, I always throw it out at people and say, how do we, what's the process for financial planning? And everybody says, we go out in the market and we assess the market, and then, we look at the income, whether it's garlic, whether it's onions, we'll go out, how much garlic can we sell? What's the market for garlic? What are people prepared to pay? And then, how much garlic can we grow? And we get the income figure. So in terms of financial planning, generally the first thing everybody does is work out what sort of income from the enterprise is available. And then once we've got that pegged, we can go out and say, well, okay, we're going to grow X number of acres of garlic. What's it going to cost? So the formula looks like income minus expenses equals a surplus or a profit. And one of the biggest problems with that formula is profit or surplus becomes the result of business. Profit should never be the result of business. It's the reason why we do business. And profit isn't greed. A lot of people have problems with that word profit, so I use surplus often, or even just the word reward. By the end of the business, you want a bit of a reward. But when I look at nature, profit is everywhere in nature. Bears put on fat to hibernate, whales put on blubber to migrate, squirrels put acorns away for winter. There's profit everywhere, and it allows people in nature to get over the ups and downs, the seasonality or whatever it is. Putting away a little bit is part of nature. So that formula of income minus profit equals expenses creates a focus on profit and capture expenses, because profit is literally the reason why we do business. So there are a couple of little things like that again really make financial planning part of your holistic context. And your holistic context connects back and says, well, how do you want to feel around your finances? If you want to feel comfortable, secure, generous, however you want to feel around finances, you cannot feel those without some sort of a plan. And again, some people need to know where every dollar and cent is spent. Other people, as long as they roughly they can get those feelings of sense of comfort. And then the final component of the last 2 days is the land planning. And I think more and more today, educators are really using P.A. Yeoman's scale of relative permanence as a fantastic way of planning infrastructure for properties. When Savory started his land planning program, it was really focused on fencing and animals. And P.A. Yeoman's comes in much more holistically, I think, looking at climate, looking at topography, water. And so we'll be just having a touch base on that scale of relative permanence as a way of planning land, which is often really expensive. So that's the the full program over 4 2-day sessions, and obviously we provide all the materials, all the software, all the printed ebooks, the textbook. So everybody gets all the resources and then PDFs of everything, so they can continue to print off copies, in the years ahead. And of course, also the catering and teas and morning teas and lunches are all taken care of as well. So that's what the course looks like, Charlie.
And the dates, have you got the dates there? I did have them somewhere, but they're I know they're October, November, January, February.
December, yeah. Charlie, I haven't got the dates here. I apologise. I should have.
That's all right.
But they are on our website, and they're starting in October. So
and
we'll be ready to rock for
and
that.
And the website, inside out. Just make sure I've got the because I'll put it in the show notes. What's the website with all its dots and comms and stuff?
Okay, so it's www.
Yep.
Inside outside mgt
inside out
.com.au
.com.au or
.au.
So anyone interested in that?
So we've got courses coming up in
You got
other courses coming up in Albury, Tasmania, and probably the Northern Rivers. We're starting to look again at the Northern Rivers. We've done, I think, 7 or 8 courses at Lismore and about 7 courses at Moolumbar. So wherever we can get numbers together, I normally find my way down there. So exciting.
Well, Brian, I really appreciate your time today. We're going to have a quick break and do a quick little Q&A, which will be available for our subscribers. And for those who are listening to this and would like to be a subscriber, then I think best thing is to go to, I think it's Apple. Go to Apple Podcast and my this Regenerative Journey page. Just search it out there, and there's a little button up the top that says subscribe. I think I might have on my Instagram thing, there might be a subscribe button as well. So we'll make sure those dates for Burrawa are here. We'll put the website there. If Burrawa doesn't suit people, of course, you've got a number of other ones that may be closer to home. But we trust that we'll get fully we'll max out the Burrawa one, Brian, and really appreciate your time. I'm relieved that I've finally, after all these years, had an hour with you. Virtually was better than nothing, and it's been an absolute joy. And I'm really looking forward to you've whet my appetite even more now. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in person in October. But we'll have a bit of a chat once we have a little bit of a break in a minute. And Brian, thank you so much. It's been a lovely chat.
Thank you, Charlie. And again, thank you for all the work you're doing as well. Really fantastic. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
This podcast is produced by Rhys Jones at Jaeger Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe, share, rate and review. For more episode information, please head over to www.charliearnott.com.au.